Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, you are listening to Ratchet and Respectable. Whew, there's a lot going on right now. But we're actually not going to talk about most of it. The Diddy trial, as of today, I'm recording on Tuesday, it's day 10 of the trial. Today's testimony with Capricorn Clark, one of Diddy's former assistants, was a doozy, to say the least. But I'll save that, I guess, for a bonus episode. I don't know when that's going to happen. I got to travel this week, so there's definitely not going to be one. But I am doing recaps on social media. So if you follow on Instagram or you follow on Threads, join the other 300,000 people that are reading daily updates on the Diddy trial. No commentary, unfortunately, just the facts. Literally a recap of what happened that day. I do it for the 9-to-5ers, people who got quote unquote real jobs. They can't be on the internet refreshing all day from multiple different sites. I do them daily, literally every day since the trial started. And I will do my best to keep them up until the conclusion of the trial, which is expected. The judge said earlier today, before the July 4th weekend. We will likely not have a verdict by then. The judge does want the trial wrapped up by then. Who knows how long we'll have to wait for a verdict. Remember we thought we'd have to wait a real long time for the OJ verdict? And then they came back right away, oh no, we're clear. We know what we want to say. And then, Oh, the other thing is Remy and Papoose. I know the podcast is called Ratchet and Respectable. That's too ratchet for me. The only part of this whole drama with this married couple and their two, what's the word? Side pieces? They are whole married people. I mean, the divorce just got filed for. There's no divorce decree. It's strange, but married and legally bound nonetheless. But Papoose and Remy have been married forever and a day, and they both have people that they're in relationships with publicly outside of their marriage. And this has been going on for quite some time. I don't know exactly what excited everything to make Remy and Papoose start going back and forth at each other online with all sorts of allegations, which I'm going to say the same thing about them that I say about everybody else who puts their good business and back and forth online. I mean, thank you for sharing, but there's nothing that we, the public, can do for you. The court of public opinion will not get a judge to sign your divorce decree any faster. We cannot provide the additional therapy that your children will need from their parents feuding back and forth this way. We can't help. All people do is talk about it on podcasts or put it on blogs, which, if it's a light week, thank you for the additional fodder and helping me, fill the time. But I cannot do anything for you. Neither can any other member of the public. I know you want to vent. You need a group chat. I will say this, because it's the only part of the feud that I really perked up. Papoose and Remy, how long have they been married? If it's not over 10 years, it's pushing it. Papoose and Remy are very grown people. I'm not sure how old Remy is, but it's not important for this. Papoose is 47. The woman that he is dating, Clarissa Shields, the boxer, she just had a biopic done about her. She's a pretty big deal. She's the modern Layla Ali. She is 30 years old. She is a champion. She is still an active boxer. She has a bright, lucrative, potentially drama-free future ahead of her if she were to make different choices than the one that she's making right now. So she is dating, literally online, calling Papoose her boyfriend, although he is still married to Remy Ma, who, again, also has a boyfriend publicly. Remy took Christmas pictures with her boyfriend while she was married to Papoose, and I was like, hey, even if y'all separated, even if y'all you've gone your separate ways, but go on and file your paperwork, because this is messy. There's a way to do things, and I didn't like to listen when I was a young person, but y'all are the same age as me. Y'all have lived long enough to know that the best way to do things is decent and in order. What y'all doing is not decent or in order. Remy is 44. She middle-aged too. Papoose, his 30-year-old girlfriend, the boxing champion, and Remy have been going back and forth. Remy's dude, to my knowledge, hasn't been saying much, but I'm not all up in this situation. Remy responds to Papoose. Remy has had some things to say about the girlfriend. I don't know what put it on Remy's spirit to just, say this, but it was something that needed to be said. And the 30-year-old girlfriend is not going to listen because of the messenger, but the message was strong. Remy addressed the girl I mean, not picking up the phone, but in like she went live on IG. And Remy was like, hey, sis. She was real calm about it. And she was like, you got a bright future ahead of you. You're 30 years old. Same thing I just said. You're a boxing champion. You seem ambitious. You seem focused. What are you doing? Messing with a 47-year-old man who has 4 children, the oldest of which, I think she said the child was 28, about to turn 29. You're 30. His oldest child is 28, about to turn 29. What are you doing with this man? This man has 4 biological children. He's 17 years older than you. He is literally old enough to be your father because he has a child that's a year or 2 max younger than you. Why are you taking up with this man? 3 of the children, I think, are grown in their 20s. And then he and Remy have a daughter together that I think is around 6 or so. Why is this your choice in life? To which I was like, where did she lie? Where did she lie? And then she said, hey, you know what? I know he's telling you that he wants to have another child. He wants to have a son, a boy. He's telling you he wants another baby. You know what? He actually has a son already. He doesn't like his son's sexuality, but he has a son already. What else Remy told her? Remy told her, she was like, oh, he's broke, right? He ain't got no money. She had posted a receipt from the pawn shop earlier this week. She said her estranged husband had pawned her Cartier bracelet for like $2,500, $3,000, somewhere in there. Clarissa responded, so she was like, he and I are going to make a family and you don't know and la, la, la. And I was like, oh, young girl, oh, young girl, oh, young girl. Crashing out over Papoose. And I was like, he must fuck like the nigga that puts stickers on avocados. Like, all this over Papoose. I don't want to be put through the mattress like that. I don't want the Mario coins banged out of me. Like, I don't want nothing so good it makes me make horrible decisions. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want no dick that good. I don't want nobody who spit game is that good. I don't want nobody have mind control because that's the only way you can describe it because it makes no sense on the surface. Like there has to be more to it. I don't want to be so caught up in the rapture. Like I don't want it. I'm good. I'm good. Like love, sure. Stupid. I don't fuck me stupid. I'm good. Silly. Fine. Stupid. No. We have other things to talk about this episode. More important things than this. I, like most of America, dare I say most of the world, have been obsessed with Mara Brock-Akil's new show, Forever. I told y'all I sat around and sobbed watching a show about a bunch of teenagers and not even like sobbing about like their teen life. I mean, yes, that too. But also like my own life and my own choices. Like I was an emotional mess during both viewings. I've watched the whole series twice at this point. I checked today. The show came out May 8th. It is May 27th. It's been almost 3 weeks, and it's still in the top 10 on Netflix. It's number 10 when I checked earlier today. So a whole bunch of people are still watching the show. I had promised maybe like 2 weeks ago, we would do a comprehensive, thorough review of the show. And then like the Diddy trial happened. And I was like, hey, work with me. Like, I got to cover this trial that I didn't think was going to happen. And now it's happening. That was such a bad call. But that's not the point. The point is, we have today our comprehensive Forever review, discussion, recap, whatever you want to call it. And we're having it with one of my favorite people on the planet. Her name is Thembi Banks. She also just so happens to be a director of 2 episodes on the show, 2 very controversial episodes on the show. One of them is the episode where the kids are having sex and people are like, why do we need to see that? Thembi explains why. In addition to being one of my favorite humans and my former colleague, we used to work at Essence together like a zillion years ago. She is one of a handful of people I knew before I decided I'm not going to do this corporate thing and I'm just going to branch out and try my own thing. She was one of the people I'd seen do it and was like very successful at it. I was like, okay, so like pulling a pivot is not really that crazy. We would always be at the office until like, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 sometimes at night. And one day I was leaving and Thembi was in the office and I saw the boxes and, all her stuff was gone. And I was like, wait, do you got a new job? Like, and she was like, I'm moving. And I was like, moving? Nobody leaves New York. She's from Harlem. Nobody leaves New York. She was like, I'm moving to LA. I got into film school at USC. And this was around the time when like nobody moved to LA. I mean, tons of people were moving to LA, but like nobody in my circle was moving to LA because New York was still considered like the epicenter of the universe. And she left and she went to LA and she went to film school and she finished and she thrived. She is having an enviable career as a writer, as a director, as a producer, and she's done a ton of stuff that you would be familiar with. So just on the directing side, because that's what we're here to talk about today, she's done Insecure, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Young, Wild, and Free. That's her own movie. She wrote that. She produced that. She has an NAACP award for that. You've heard me talk about her on here before because I mentioned when she got the NAACP awards. Unprisoned with Kerry Washington and Delroy Lindo. The Sex Lives of College Girls. Survival of the Thickest. She did 2 episodes for them. And then most recently, she did 2 episodes of Forever. And then she's got some upcoming stuff too. Upcoming stuff as a writer, but we'll talk about that during the interview. Do I have anything else that's pressing that needs to be said? I don't. Let's get to Thembi. Hi, Thembi. I'm so excited to have you. So the funny thing is, like, whenever you do a show, I just text you all my thoughts, like, literally as I'm watching the show. I feel like I've actually talked to you about things.
I know.
I remember last year we were talking about this over, I can't remember the restaurant we went to. It was on Sunset.
Yes. It's called like Madeira or something.
I loved it. The views were amazing.
Yes.
Oh my God, the views were so amazing. And the food was good.
Yes.
That's crab legs. That's not the point. You were talking to me about this show. I think you were like knee deep in it.
If it was a BT Awards, I had just finished the show, like literally days. I had just wrapped shooting the show days before.
What are your feelings about the reaction that people are having to this project?
Oh boy.
Like, when you shot it, did you know it was going to be like this like big phenomenon level thing where like people can't stop talking about it?
Yes and no. I think one of the interesting things when you're making stuff and you're in the midst of it is, and I've had this experience before, is you know you like it. And this is just solely from sometimes me being my biggest critic and also just realizing that I've made things before in the past and been like, this is it. It's perfect. I love it. Everyone's going to see it the way I see it. And they don't. And then the stuff that you make that you're like, this was just okay. It's fine. We're going to move on. And then people are like, it's the best thing since sliced bread. Like that has continuously happened to me. And so that's left me in a place where it's like, I like it and love it. I don't know how people are going to receive it. I assume they'll like it too. Was in the middle of shooting some scenes and I was like, oh, people are going to love this. People are going, and by people, I specifically was thinking Black people. When I was shooting scenes with Wood Harris and Karen Pittman, I was like, I've never seen this on TV before. Not in this way, right? Like maybe a film back in my teenage years had some aspect of a married couple having this type of discussion, but never like this, never a TV series. This is modernized now. So their conversations are around, what's happening today. And I was like, it all feels so right and so special. I think if people don't like anything else, they'll like certain aspects of this that they've never seen before. And so I had a feeling that people were going to be like, I've been starving for this type of content and here it is.
People are discussing them along with like OG Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil, Cliff and Claire, Beth and Randall. This one season, they become like iconic, particularly Wood Harris in this role.
Yeah. I think this is the first time many people have seen this type of dad. And it's beautiful and refreshing because he's equal parts cool as he is responsible and nurturing. All of those elements coming together and representing a Black father who is in the midst of all of the chaos and the beauty and the good and the bad. And he's sticking around and being there for his family in this way and showing up for his family in a major way. I think it is just melting people's hearts because I know that it is something that it's one of my favorite aspects of the show as well.
He's in partnership. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It's really rare to see. And it's really refreshing to see, especially like just being online. There's so many conversations about relationships and submission and whose role is this. And, it's just it's like, do you actually like raise children and live in reality? Because it's all hands on deck and people get it done. And that's kind of the partnership part of it is probably the best way to do it.
Absolutely. Hank and I, my husband, we were just talking about partnership and how, some people, especially for certain directions that they want their life to be in, need a partner, not just like a romantic lover, but they need a partner. And I think that is also what's really great to see about that marriage is that they, at some point, you imagine, were in agreement of where they wanted their life to be. And so they, really put their heads together, not just their hearts, but they put their heads together to create a life for themselves and their children that manifests into something really beautiful. And I think that's great to see because we've seen both ends of the scale. We've seen, from like a Bel Air or Fresh Prince, where we've seen these really rich families and oftentimes that doesn't feel attainable because the wealth and the lifestyle just feels so over the top. It's fun to watch, but the ability to relate is not necessarily there. And then you've seen the other representation of people really struggling to the point where they're like broken homes to find these people who are doing well, but there's also just like such a groundedness to them both, I think is just amazing.
Did you expect that Dawn would get so much criticism? The character, Karen Pittman, who, by the way, isn't this the show that she left? I always call it the new Sex and the City. And just like that,
As she was shooting this, I think it did come out that she left and just like that. I didn't necessarily expect, pushback on her character. No. But I'm not surprised by it because I think the larger conversation, and I've also seen, which was disappointing to me, some people they thoroughly enjoy the show, whatever, and then they just get into the nitty gritty of like who they like, emotions about certain people and situations. And I've also seen people kind of go in on the character Keisha and say they're annoyed by her or they're frustrated by her, but not in like a playful way. Like they have strong, and these are Black people, Black women, strong feelings about how they don't like Keisha. And I just think it boils down to we have to address the misogyny specifically that exists within the Black community because it's like they want perfection from women. And then when you ask them what the perfection is, they can't even tell you, right? But they can pinpoint things that they just don't like. And I think that that is just very frustrating. And I think that this show is bringing that up in a way where we need to interrogate that even more. I think Dawn is doing the best she can. And in a lot of ways, she's excelling and she's being the mom that we all know Black women to be. And I think she's doing a great job. Karen just brought such a force and an energy to her scenes. Sometimes I think, as much as people say they love strong Black mothers and Black women, and what we do for our families and how we kind of like, have such a great presence in raising our children and being a partner to our husbands. I think they also are seeing this, and I don't know, it's just something in them to just react to her, owning her power.
I think people have an idea that they want perfect characters, but it actually makes for incredibly boring TV. Like if everyone always makes the right decision, if everyone
Yes,
always does the right thing, if
yes.
everyone always says the right thing, then it's like, well, there's no conflict. Like nothing's happening because everyone's always getting along.
Sometimes I'll peruse and I'll see what people are saying about shows and characters just in general. And as a storyteller and a person who learned the craft of storytelling, I'm like, guys, conflict is the crux of any great story. And I think you guys are not realizing that the feeling you have is supposed to be there. You're supposed to dive into the conflict of a character. A character is not supposed to do the right thing all the time.
Yeah. But what I really did love, and I think this applies to Dawn's character and I think all the major characters in the show, is everyone's just very, like, I keep using this word lately, very ordinary people. Like everyone's just trying to do their best. They're trying to figure themselves out. Nobody's really malicious in any of their intent. It's just everybody's out here just making mistakes and just being human and just living and trying to do their best and just caught up in their own ish.
Mm.
And legitimately, I think most of the characters are trying to do better. Just some people just don't know what they're doing all the time.
Yes, I agree. I love the worlds that Mara has been able to create because I think how you've articulated it, they're just ordinary people. I think one of the things we learn when you're learning storytelling is you want to tell stories about ordinary people under extraordinary circumstances, and that's where the magic happens. And I think she does that time and time again beautifully. And so, yeah, I think that's also the magic of what she's been able to do in creating these characters.
I love Dawn. She frustrated me sometimes because she was so hard. I understand where it's coming from, but also I just still deeply relate as being a kid who the pressure, like I remember coming home with like 4 A's and a B and both of my parents being like, "So where'd the other A go?" And I'm like, "But I have a 3.8." Like, are you kidding me right now? And it comes from a good place, but it's also like, ease up, you know? Like you have a good kid.
Yes. Yes, I identify way too much with Dawn, way too much. Like, I would even come home and tell Hank, like, "I can't wait for you to see this show because Dawn is me and I am Dawn." And I know that that is not a good thing in certain circumstances, but I'm owning it. That is me, you know?
You're also raising a black son.
Yes, yes. And also, Dawn is exceptional. And I think when people have done a lot with their lives, they expect their kids to do even more. So it's like, look, if I did this, you're doing X, Y, and Z even better, right? And so you do put your own kind of stuff onto your kids just based on who you are and what you manage to do. And that I could absolutely see that being me as well. So yeah.
Can we talk about this Keisha situation? Because I think even harder than people win at Dawn, they win at Keisha. And I was like, y'all know that's a teenage girl, right?
That's a comment that I would see. Honestly, I wouldn't necessarily see the criticism. I would see people responding to the criticism. That's how I even really knew that there was an issue with Keisha, is people saying, "I don't understand what this backlash is. You guys know that," and they just articulated what you did. You know that she's a 17-year-old making decisions as a 17-year-old. And to that effect, that means that she is doing the typical thing, the right thing. She's making the mistakes that you make at that age. Nothing to see here, people, right? Like this is not like a situation where you're like, she is so problematic. No, she's doing what teenage girls do.
The blocking, the back and forth, the bad communication, the ups and downs, the emotional roller coaster. And I was like, I mean, that's typical 17, but I think that's also like typical, like, I don't know, like 35 too.
And then also, it's like, well, if you're frustrated with Keisha, where's that same frustration with Justin? Because he's doing the same thing, right?
And
Like,
mhm.
he's being 17 years old too. I love the scenes that Mara put in there because, like you said, we see this behavior all the way up until 30s, and sometimes 40s. Texting somebody, "You good?" And then the long text about, "Well, actually, this is how I feel." And then realizing, I'm not going to say all of that. I'm just going to say, "Yep." You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, they were both doing it.
The number of times I have texted out like paragraphs, like, girl, you can't be sending that man no paragraphs. So I just erase everything and be like, okay,
Yes, yes, grown folks.
I am not using my words. I am a grown woman.
Exactly, and they were both doing that. We've gotta give our girls and women grace the same way we do the boys and the men. I think sometimes some of the smoke for Keisha specifically was coming from the sexual nature of her story and her backstory, and I think that also was setting people off because I think I talk about this all the time, especially when I'm out pitching stories and talking to people about, stories centered around Black people. I was like, Black people tend to be very conservative. And so a lot of times they wince still at the idea of sexuality, sex, exploring yourself, getting to know yourself better sexually. And especially as a young person, I think we are at the very beginning stages of coming to accept that teenagers are allowed to have an ability to get to know who they are from a sexual identity perspective, from like exploring who they are, exploring sex. And it's okay, it's not a bad thing. And so I think that also kind of was giving people a little ammunition to say, oh, she made a mistake and she's bad for it,
The episode when she tells her mom and her mom kind of treats it like she's pure victim.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, no, like I sent it to him. The idea, I think, was that, at least I had in my head, is that they had this encounter and he may have filmed her, maybe with her permission, maybe not. But the idea that like she was okay with being filmed and she actually sent it to him and he wasn't supposed to share it. I mean, obviously, but it was like she had more agency in this situation than what people, I think, were comfortable with. It was one thing where it was like, oh, this whole thing just happened to her. And it was like, well, no, it's more gray.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people responded to that and they were like, I love that twist. I love that turn. I appreciated that was like an added layer to the situation. That scene was in one of my episodes, and I thought it was a beautiful way to kind of, so to speak, end that discussion as she was coming to a reconciliation with her mom and her saying, I felt like I betrayed myself, and that was the part that I just couldn't get over. I thought that was just also beautifully done, Mara laying that into the story. So yeah, it was a good moment.
Also, her trying to like give him head in the theater, like people were like really upset about that too. And I was like, she wasn't being forced.
Yes, yes.
The uncomfortable thing, and I think I said this on like a previous episode where I talked about this, it's like she is a teenage girl with the same raging hormones or a similar version of raging hormones that her male counterparts have.
Because women are not allowed to acknowledge that, A
Yeah.
lot of times people don't want to acknowledge that women want sex, like sex, want to initiate sex. Like, we're not all demure,
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily start at 30.
Yeah. But when that does start early, that's when you get the labels. She's fast. You know what I mean? She's promiscuous. And it's like, or she's just being a regular hormonal teenager, going through the motions and figuring it out.
I appreciate it because, so much of the conversation we have about teenage girls having sex is that it's usually with men who are like in their mid-20s or older. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, this is two kids in the same like maturity bracket
Yeah.
exploring themselves and figuring out their early experiences very innocently, even despite like that backstory with the basketball player and everything, but still very innocent.
Absolutely it is. And that's another thing that I loved about this show, and I think everyone else is loving, is it's weird. I feel like the universe just always, or God, or what, however you see it, just always is making sure to remind you and bring certain things to you to say, this is a part of your purpose, and this is a part of your gift or what it is that you're going to say in this world. And for some reason, throughout a lot of my storytelling and filmmaking experiences, I have just really gravitated towards YA, which is young adult. And that's like the label in like, the book industry, film industry is like YA. And so this is very much, Forever is very much like a YA show, even though it has family and adults in it. The theme and the thrust is young adults and coming of age. And when I started to realize early on that I loved telling those types of stories and that I wanted to continue to tell those types of stories, I realized I grew up watching John Hughes. A lot of his bread and butter films like Breakfast Club,
Mhm.
Ferris Bueller, and Pretty Pink, those are YA stories. Those are coming of age stories. Those are about the teen angst and the growing pains that kids experience when they're in like high school in those like formal years where they're figuring it out. And they got pressure from their parents, pressure from school, pressure from friends. And I loved watching those films, but it wasn't until I got older that I realized I didn't see myself in those films. I didn't see my communities in those films. And so I was like, very early on, I want to tell as many of those stories as possible so that the younger me, the generation that, is coming up now, they can turn to various things and see themselves and relate to these characters and maybe even find some inspiration and some tools that they can use to just grow. The innocence that we're able to see with these two young people and the growth that we're able to see over the course of the season, I just love it so much. And I can't wait for season 2 and 3 and for other shows to come down the pike and other movies to come where people can continue to like revel in the innocence of young, beautiful Black kids.
I want to ask you about season 2, which congratulations, by the way.
Yes. Well, congrats to Mara and team because, as a guest director,
You'll be
I
back.
came in.
You'll be back.
Was
You know you'll be back.
They had already put in so, many months and years, quite frankly, of work and like writing these stories and creating these stories. And so I came in to kind of help with the execution of it. But all the congrats, most of it really just goes to them. And I'm just fortunate enough that they allowed me to come and play and take everything that they did and help put it on screen.
Did you direct I think you did, the episode where they have sex for the first time?
Yes, I did.
That's caused a bit of controversy, my friend.
It did?
Yeah, people are like, do we really need to see like teenagers having sex? Like, is this necessary? Like, I know the actors are of age, but it's like actually showing them.
Yes. Guys, this is based on Judy Blume's very controversial book that explored teenage sexuality. When it came out at the time, it was a big deal because she was taking teenagers in book form and having them, especially a girl was the lead in her book, the hero in her book, and she was exploring sex. And so that is the theme. I know that like once you just first came to see and understand Forever, you may not have even had that context. You may have just been on Netflix and said, "Ooh, Black people, let me press this. Oh, Mara Barker Kill. Yes, let me watch this," and just dove into the world, not really knowing a lot of the backstory or the IP that it was based on. But that is a huge part of the story. It's about teenage sex, and that's okay. I never shy away from sex scenes or intimacy or anything like that. What I wanted to do for that scene, and Mara and I talked about it a lot because in her following episode, she also had them, having sex and it actually being a little bit more successful. And so we coordinated and talked about, the progression from my episode to her episode and how we wanted to make sure that we were in sync and telling that story in the right way. I think it was important for us to see it. And we've seen it before, like when you look back in the 90s, you see teenagers kissing and canoodling and having their first time. These are all things that are like healthy to see and experience. And as long as it's done with taste and grace and nuance, there's nothing wrong with it, guys. Calm down.
I mean, there was nothing, at least especially like the first time, there was nothing titillating about it. It was actually like, oh God, it was actually cringy.
Yes, yes. And it was supposed to be that way. We wanted to show how it is going in with the best of intentions, but being two people who've never done this before and who are new to this, there's fumbles and there's awkwardness. And so it wasn't to like have some hot and racy scene. It was really just to show everyone has to start somewhere and learn and grow from something. And, this is a beautiful part of the growth experience as a human.
Also, more dimension to Keisha. So, like, if you were, going on the spectrum, like, oh, she's the type of girl that does this thing. She's like, no, I've actually never done this before. I did the other thing because I was with my boyfriend and it's like, oh.
Yes. I love that too. I love that came out in that scene where he made these assumptions and everybody else was making these assumptions. And you realize that even two people who spend countless hours on the phone and who talk and who are communicating a lot, there's still some things that you haven't really discussed because, again, you let your assumptions kind of like lead you down a road. And so these people who are super in love with each other and who are committed to each other in a big way just found something very crucial out about, themselves after. And that's life, right? And that's definitely young life, finding that out about themselves.
It's also grown life too.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
That's one of the things that has people, I think, crying all over the place. Let me just speak for myself. It's so much of what they're experiencing for the first time are things that you experience over and over again throughout your life. before when I mentioned it, I was speaking about Keisha being betrayed by her first boyfriend. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's something that happens. Maybe not in that specific way, but
Mm.
trusting someone and then they break your trust. That happens over and over again. Or poor communication skills. Like that's something if you don't work on, it stays with you throughout your life. Or Justin
Mhm.
having to stand up to his parents and declare, like, you got this expectation, but I'm not going to do the thing you think I'm going to do. And you have to stand up for yourself over and over and over and over. And it's just, you relate to it because they're doing it for the first time, but like it's something that most of us have to do a million times.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was the beauty of the story as well. Again, coming of age, right? Finding your voice. And each of these characters, Justin and Keisha, in dealing with their family and the expectations that are put on them, they had to find a way to speak to their parents so that they were heard. And that's new. We grew up, the best depictions of Black family life were, I brought you in this world and I'll take you out. That was on the Cosby Show, right? And everybody erupted into laughter and clapped because they're like, that's right. You know what I mean? That's how we're doing it in these households if we're raising good kids. And so now the conversation has evolved. Black parents are now talking about gentle parenting with your toddlers, and that's a struggle. They're talking about apologizing to your kids when you've done something wrong. That wasn't a thing back in the day. And then also listening to your kids and letting them have a voice and allowing them to vocalize to you and push back and challenge you. And that brings out, healthy people who know how to communicate. This is all new. We still haven't seen that depiction up until now of it literally what it manifests into and what it looks like.
Yeah. Are you gentle parenting?
I am absolutely trying.
I am doing my best.
I am doing my best. It has become more of a conversation with my husband because my 3-year-old is very, it just so happens that, it's like God places in your life the things that you didn't know you need that are going to challenge you. And so my 3-year-old is very sensitive. He's very in tune with his emotions, and he lets us know how he feels every step of the way. So if we speak sternly to him, if we raise our voice, he will tell us, it makes me feel sad when you yell, I don't like that. And like when you hear that from a 3-year-old, you're like, well, geez, I'm an idiot. You know what I mean? It's so like, I have no choice but to gentle parent, if that makes sense.
Yes. That would break me. Oh my God.
Yes. Like he will just straight up tell us. And even when he's like being a terror, like he can literally be writing on the walls, right? And spilling, his food all over the place and running around and not listening. And as soon as we're like, do not do that, he will let us know, I don't like it when you say that. And then instantly it's like, it doesn't matter that he was acting crazy. We need to still acknowledge that, like, even if we were quote unquote right, we hurt his
Hurt the
feelings
feelings
and
of a
we've got
3-year-old. Like,
to,
do you feel good? You feel good about yourself now?
exactly, you still have to acknowledge, like, I'm sorry, for hurting your feelings, and you can still tell the person, like, hey, you've got to listen or whatever, but you still have to, as a new age parent, as a new Black parent, you still have to acknowledge, I don't want to hurt your feelings and I'm sorry for doing that.
Stop writing
However,
on my
but you
wall.
still got to say those
Yes.
words. Yeah.
I have a couple more questions for you. One of them is
Mm-hmm.
about Keisha's mom.
Love me some Zosha
She
Rockmore.
was, we intentionally don't see her as much as we see Justin's parents because she's working all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
One of the things that comes up when people speak about her is her reaction when Keisha tells her, this is this thing that I've been keeping from you. And she was just like, she just like, I got to go to work.
Yes. Yes. That was in my episode. And those two together, anytime they had to bring in those very emotional and difficult scenes, they just killed it. They brought it every single time. I love their chemistry. The great thing about directing is when you've got amazing actors. Your job is to just not get in the way, right? Like your job is to just maybe simply guide and shape, but just let them do their thing because they're going to find it and they're going to bring so much to it. And in that scene where she, is like cussing and like, I gotta go to a job so I can pay for a school I can't fucking afford and blah, blah. And it just felt so real. And her initial reaction, I loved how honest it was, how it was depicted on the page and how they brought life to it. Because it's like when you're a person who's trying so hard to raise your daughter right, and then these things happen, you're so frustrated with yourself. And it's not even like your kids sometimes. It's like you're so frustrated with yourself and so mad that you just got to get out of there. And I think she did that really well.
I think everyone wanted her to be able to show up for her daughter in that moment. In that moment, I saw her perspective completely and would probably, unfortunately, do the same thing. That's why I was like, I'm an auntie. I'm an auntie for a reason. But like, it's so overwhelming. It's like, I'm busting my ass working these 2 jobs. You got me out here looking crazy because this thing happened. Everybody knows about it but me.
Yeah,
I really shouldn't be having to work this hard. Now I just found out why. And then you staring in my face talking about, well, like, yeah, I kind of wanted to do it. Girl, what?
I know.
Like, this, it's a lot.
It was a perfect, and again, this is why I think the show has done so well and resonated with so many people, because it's the perfect situation, as you've just described it, all of the things compounded onto one another. And it makes for such juicy, messy conflict that is also heartbreaking, and that parents to be parents, or just, aunties and people just looking at it from, like a perspective of just understanding human dynamics and situations. They all are like, this sucks. This is dramatic. This is the drama. I want to see what happens. It's what makes the show so exciting to watch and entertaining to watch, because it's like, what do you do? Where do you go from here? This is a lot. And I want to just say that Mara, to me, what I've learned in working on this show and working closely with her and seeing how this show, manifests and the stories that she's telling, and then just also going back and looking at how we all first met Mara through girlfriends and revisiting some of those storylines and stories. What I like to, playfully say is like, Mara understands mess and she does it well, because she knows how to create these very complicated, messy situations, and she gets her characters into these places that are so difficult that you as a person is scratching your head like, how are they going to make their way out of it? And then she does. And I think that's the sign of a good storyteller is, you back your characters up against the wall, and then you figure out a way how to get them out of it. And sometimes they don't necessarily, quote unquote, get out of it. They have to live with some of those consequences, but they kind of move on from it. And that's how life is. That's the beauty of life. And so she just does that so well.
Do you think Dawn was wrong for calling Keisha's mom or making Keisha tell her mom?
No.
You're like, no.
Again, I identify so much with Dawn. There's probably not much that Dawn did that I disagreed with, but even in my episodes and working through the scenes that I had with Dawn, bringing my perspective and approach to the work, I was like, I see where other people could maybe not agree or identify, but I do, baby. I do. I do. Everything she was doing, I was like, and would, and did. Yes. Yes. I think it was necessary. And I loved when Dawn said, the people at that school failed her, but we're her village and we will not fail her. I've got to step in as a Black woman and say, this young girl is in my orbit. If I don't do anything, I'm going to make sure that I add to her growth in some kind of way. I add positively to her situation, and I step in and I'm there for her and doing when she said, Justin, sometimes when you love people, you have to do the hard thing. Um, I love that. That's what we all need to be doing for each other.
I felt like Dawn's motivation, even if I didn't always agree with her choices, her motivation was in the right place.
Yes. Yes.
So even in that scene, like her motivation is protecting Keisha. Even though I think she's hard on Justin, her motivation is protecting her Black son and wanting him to succeed in the world.
Absolutely.
I don't always agree with her methods, but
Mhm.
her heart was in the right place, and I think that counts for something. It's done out of love.
Yes, yes. And I just let me tell you, I'm team Dawn so much. There's so many things that she said and did where I just see and feel those words coming out of my mouth in 10 years. When she said, yes, my first priority was to protect you. So when I hear this girl that you messing around with, has a sex tape, my first instinct is to get you away, right? And then now that I've had time to think about it, now it is also to help her through this. Yes. So, I'm dealing with this in real time. Thank you for pointing out that like my first instinct was probably not the fully thought out instinct and like, whatever, but I'm here now and this is what I'm doing. And I think what really resonated, I was working on a show recently, a couple weeks ago with Keke Palmer, and she was telling me how she binged it. And we were talking about how we related to Dawn so much because, Keke has a son. And we loved when Dawn said, Justin, I want you to be with a Black girl, but I will not have you be disrespected. Right? Like, oh my God, that's me all the way.
Do you agree with Dawn on letting Justin take that gap year after high school?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I think the idea of gap years is very foreign to Black folks and to folks of a certain.
Malia Obama had a gap year. We know what gap year is.
No, we just learned what gap year is. To be quite honest, if you ask the average Black person, I'm talking about your cousins and them, do you know what a gap year is? Do you know Malia Obama took one? They're going to be like, no. I promise you, gap year is still very new to our folks. And what I do know about people who've taken gap year, i.e. white folks and their kids, that exploration and allowing them to, because gap year is not, I'm going to sit at home on Xbox and eat cereal. Typically how I was introduced to the idea of gap year was a kid going to Europe, a kid maybe taking up something that they think they want to explore. Like, I love flowers. Let me just explore botany. Let me go to this thing. Let me go to this cooking academy and take a class or something like that. It still is a year where you're working to find and figure things out. And I think that's great. Coming from the generation that, you and I come from, Demetria, where I've had myself and I've had friends who've been like, after undergrad, I'm going straight to law school, going straight to medical school, going straight to this school. And then you're like a 30-year-old who hates your career and you're pivoting hard, right? Like you're like, I'm gonna be a makeup artist. You know what I mean? And
like, you're a lawyer, ma'am. You're a lawyer.
You and I both know too many people that straight up got JDESQ, all kinds of things, at the end of their name, only to either completely pivot and decide I'm going to become a swimming instructor or to still hold on to whatever it is they have because they're so far down the path. But now that hobby, they got to do this thing now, right? So they're like, oh, I always wanted to write a book or about XYZ. So I'm doing that now on the side. I've got to feed that part of myself. Gap years help you figure it out. You know what I mean? And so I'm a big proponent of that.
So this is where we differ because I'm of the belief that college also helps you figure it out.
Absolutely. You're right.
Go to college, right? Like do the college plan. Maybe not, Northwestern's plan, but maybe somewhere else. And if you want to have a gap year, like after you graduate and before you either go to grad school, B school, law school, whatever, because you're going to get a graduate degree. But before that, like you can take a year then.
No, look, I'm still that hyper focused. We are going for the gold and we are doing things and, we're not just kind of like bumbling through life. If I got a graduate degree, you sure enough need to figure out, how you're going to get one, all that type of stuff. So I agree. I think gap years are only for certain situations. I think in Justin's situation, he unfortunately figured things out kind of too late and was able to voice things to his parents because they weren't necessarily hearing him because they had their own agenda. So here he is. I hate to hear, especially our people, I hate to hear our people say, college is not everything. And then they point to influencers or the one person who's an entrepreneur who's made, millions of dollars, as they were exiting high school. I'm like, that's few and far in between. But college is useful for so much more than just career. And I love that in this show, college was of the conversation because I still think for our kids, we should not be pushing them to say, you don't have to go to college. You can make $1 million online doing God knows what or starting a business. I still think, especially for our people, especially when you're talking about HBCUs and the power in the community that you get there that you wouldn't get anywhere else at any other time in your life, we should still be pushing college to our kids.
I agree. I'm a large proponent of college. Like, you want to do something else? You want to start a business? Great, do that. And also go to college.
And also go to college.
You make your $1 million, you can pay your student loans back or pay for it out of your successful business that you're
Absolutely.
running while you're in college.
That you're running while you're in college. Hello. I'm a big proponent. Yeah. Yeah.
Was there an intentional choice not to play up blatantly the class difference or the economic difference, maybe I should say, between Keisha and Justin? Like, it's there, but it never comes up, like, from the parents or from Dawn, like, you're dating this girl who lives where, or you're dating this guy. Like, even Keisha's mom, she doesn't know about Justin for a while, but she's more focused on, like, the ex-boyfriend athlete than she is about, like, oh, you're dating this, like, rich kid who lives in, like, Baldwin Hills. I assume they were in Baldwin Hills.
They were actually in Beverly
Were
Hills.
they in
That's where
Beverly?
they're supposed to. Yeah, yeah. They're supposed to be in Beverly Hills. And that's why, like, when they're in the hair salon with Keisha's cousin, the cousin is like, you ever been below the 10? And he's like, I train in Compton. Because that's the reality
Whoa.
of a lot of Black folks here in LA who want to make sure that their kids maintain a sense of identity and who they are. They may live in a certain area and they go to school, in a certain area, i.e. these private schools with predominantly white kids. But then the trade-off is if you're interested in a sport, you're going to be on a team that trains in Compton. You're going to be on a team that trains in
Yeah, your
Inglewood.
church is in the Black neighborhood. Yeah.
Church is in the Black neighborhood. That's how a lot of even some of your fave celebrities and stuff have raised their kids. So that it's like, remember you Black and remember where you come from. And so when you go somewhere out in the world, when you're 30 years old and you hear people playing spades, you're gonna know how to do it, right?
Mhm.
Like, or you hear a Black saying, you gonna know exactly what they talking about. Like, we're not gonna have you out here just lost, right? Like, we're gonna still immerse you in these communities with Black kids who don't come from a lot of money so that, like, you have that experience too. So I'm the director who comes in once the scripts are written and all of the really tough, long, nuanced conversations have already happened, and then they've written stuff that's on the page. So I wasn't a part of the conversation as far as like how they wanted to depict those families and how they wanted to bring up class or not. But what I will say is I know that landed on a lot of people and people really appreciated that, I saw one quote online and they were like, what I loved about Keisha is that she never threw Justin's wealth or privilege in his face. It never was like, well, of course you would say that because you're rich, or of course you would do that because look at, the money you have. She never did that. I have very strong feelings about Black people telling our stories, being at the helm to tell our stories, whether that means you're the showrunner or sometimes the director or the writer. But I see a difference. Every day I watch so many different things. And when I watch stories with predominantly or all Black cast, but the showrunner is not, there's so much that's left on the table as far as nuance and subtlety and layers. And then when I watch stuff that's created by Black people, especially if they've been given a chance to really tell the story they want to, because that's a whole nother case. Sometimes they're pushed to do the very simple, surfacey thing by white studio executives. But when Black people like Mara are given free range to tell the story how they want to tell it, that's where you get this nuance where it's like, we're going to show class differences, but we're not going to do it in a way that feels very simple, very easy, and where we're indicting people. We're indicting Keisha's family for being poor. And so we're making her circumstances stand out even more and feel even more like of a struggle, right? Like, no, they don't have a lot of money and things are tight and they are trying to like keep their head above water, but they're not eating like mayonnaise sandwiches, okay? Like,
Yeah.
we don't go there. And then with Justin, it's like his family lives a nice life, but his mother is in some instances acting like they don't, right? She's raising her son as if they don't have all this money and wealth, and that, him being black and all these things still count against him. And so she's like, look, you've got a leg up, but you actually don't. So we got to still work hard, right? And I just think that that's just the beauty of a person like Mara and everybody else on the team, from Anthony Hemingway to Regina King, myself, us all being Black people who appreciate nuance and complexity, and making sure that the story was not told in a very almost like cartoonish or caricature way, that we were being honest about the situation.
One thing you said when we were talking just before we started recording is that Keisha's house, you were like, that's literally like, not so far from you. You're
Yeah.
literally shooting like in your backyard, if you will.
Yes. Yes.
And the same thing Mara said. She was like, like I've gone to Martha's Vineyard like all my life. And so like, it made sense to do a scene in the vineyard. This is something that I know.
And that was also the magical thing. So, sometimes, that saying lightning in a bottle, or, just the magic happened, or everything converged so beautifully and perfectly. That's what I think about this show. Everything came together in a way that it just made it so special. And that's why it's succeeding the way it is, because there's just such a beauty about like what everyone who's involved brought to the table to make it real and honest. So Mara being from LA, being from this place, and making it, on top of all that it already is, also a love letter to LA. So we get to depict and see every aspect of it, from Beverly Hills to Crenshaw. That's because that's somebody who cares about the depiction of Black people in LA. Then you've got Regina King, who is homegrown from LA. Also interesting, the block that, Keisha's house is on, that's also a block that she grew up on. There was a park down the street from that. She was like, I used to play in that park and walk past that park. That's truly Regina King's neighborhood that she grew up in. Having that be in the mix makes it beautiful and special. I live currently now just not too far from that, so I know that the environment well. The other thing that's also so interesting, certain details like prom, right? And that prom celebration,
Mm-hmm.
all of us from the costuming department on did the research, put our heads together and said, what is the most honest depiction of what this would look like and how people would show up for Keisha going to prom? And that's why we got that depiction. And then fast forward to literally last weekend, my husband and I are driving home and we're riding through the block and we see a prom celebration, and it was almost beat by beat the same exact thing that Keisha had. And we just stopped and stared at the balloons and the family and the fried chicken and the tables and the decoration, family coming out, and like, all the uncles in short sets and stuff. And they're like, and it was just like, this is literally a scene from forever. And it was great because it's like, man, if I didn't know it before, I absolutely know now that we did good, because this is exactly what we shot. And then Mara, being a person who has such a closeness to Martha's Vineyard, and her fighting to like have an episode that depicts what it's like to be on the vineyard and what it's like to be a family that goes there to fellowship with other Black people in the summer, and all the things that happen, that comes from a person who didn't hear about that experience, or who just kind of pulled it out of thin air. She lives and lived that experience with her own children. So that's why that felt so real. Give Black storytellers a chance to tell their stories, and you're going to continue to get more forever.
Also, the access that Mara got, because notoriously shooting on the vineyard is very, 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 very hard. I mean, you can, but will people like let you into the events and like the good places to like get the good shot?
Mara actually shot her episode not during the high season. They weren't experiencing like the typical lore that was kind of manufactured, because I think they were shooting basically during May. And so the weather wasn't as great. All of the shops weren't open. That was like the trade-off, where it was just like, oh, it wasn't like August
Mhm.
Vineyard when they were actually shooting. It looked like it, once you got all the background and, all the magic that filmmaking does, it looked like it was August.
It was beautiful, like, everything, like, LA, the vineyard, like, the whole thing was just you nailed it.
I feel like I just played a very small role in making the show what it is because, again, TV, like anything, film too, has a many different phases and facets of putting it together. And the groundwork was laid. Mara had the story, she had the writers, and she put it all together. And she poured so much of herself and her own story into it as well. And so that's also a value that people I think appreciated is that it felt so personal because it was. And I'm just again like so honored and blessed to have been able to been a part of it.
I'm honored and blessed that you were able to be a part of it.
I'm so looking forward to doing it again for season 2. And I have no idea where they're gonna go, what they're gonna cook up.
'Cause that's my next question. I'm like, "So what do you know? Do you know anything? What's going on? What have you heard?"
Nothing. All I know is that it's gonna be amazing, but I know nothing. They're very, 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 very much in the beginning stages of even trying to, like, figure out logistics of, like, when they'll start the room back up and all of that. Know nothing about the stories they wanna tell, that Mara, wants to go for this next season. I don't know how far in the future they're gonna jump or anything like that, but it's Mara Akil, so I do know that it's gonna be amazing.
It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be dramatic. We'll be sobbing all over the place again.
Absolutely, and we're gonna be like, "What?" Like, she's gonna bring that too. She's gonna bring the whiplash, like, I know she or he didn't just do that and say that. Like, we're gonna get that too, and so it's gonna be great.
Wait, what do you have coming up next?
So it's been announced a couple weeks ago that they are doing a reimagining, I'll call it, of Barbershop via a TV series. So they're, going back in the trenches and trying to tell that story again. Uh,
Mhm.
Barbershop the movie now is a TV series. I know they had one before. Kevin Hart, Heartbeats Company is attached as producer. So I'm going to be writing on that show.
You're back in the writer's room.
Back in the writer's room, I haven't been in a very long time, so I'm very excited about that, because I was, again, just wanting and craving that experience. Because the writer's room is such a crazy, beautiful time. If anybody knows anything about it, there's not, in a lot of cases, a lot of writing going on as much as there's, like, a lot of talking and
Yep.
just figuring stuff out. The writing happens, like, honestly in the evenings when you go home and you know what I mean? Like, but when people think of like a writer's room, they probably think like people are sitting in the room writing. No, you're talking and breaking the story. And from those discussions, just so much comes up. It can be a really good time. And a time of growth for you just as like a creative and a person when you just talk through, especially when you take on certain shows like a Forever where everyone's sharing their experience about first love or family and everyone's just it's like a therapy session. And so barbershop is kind of the same way, right? Like, what are the conversations you have in barbershop? What are the hot button topics? And everyone just shares, and it just becomes this big group session to discuss really hard, interesting, funny topics, and then just analyzing and interrogating them and then putting them in story form. It's a great place to be. So I'm happy to be going back into a writer's room.
I'm happy that you're going back into a writer's room. This is exciting. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait.
And just working on figuring out what my next film is going to be.
Did you have a project with Gabby coming down the
Yes, Gabourey Sidibe. So
Mhm.
we shot a pilot for a show, based on her time as a phone sex operator, um, which again, like, amazing, amazing. We love the show. We love the pilot. The network ended up passing on it, and so,
Oh,
I know, very disappointed. And so we are trying to see if like another network would want to pick it up. It's also during a time of what everybody in our industry is calling contraction, so they're not doing as many shows. And especially that means extra less shows for Black people. So it's hard to kind of get anything going, but we haven't given up on it yet. We love the show. And so we're just gonna see where we can land.
I'm gonna pray on it because you've been talking about that show like forever, ever. Like
Yeah.
you were talking about it in 2019 when I moved to LA.
Yes. And the pilot came out so well. And came out so good. And Even though, production company 20th is a production company, they loved it. And so, we wanted to see the light of day.
It will.
Thank you.
Pray on it. It will. I'm going to speak it into existence. Yes,
I
it will.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Wasn't she magic? She's one of my favorite people with good cause. Do you see why I love her so much? How she is today is how she is always. I need to go visit her in LA. I haven't seen her since the dinner we talked about at the top of the episode. That was last year during BET Awards, which are coming up soon. I won't be in LA for them, though, this year. I got a bunch of stuff going on in the East Coast. My interior designer hit me today and was like, I'm sending you the design for the cabinets. Apparently, there's a sale wherever she gets the cabinets. So she was like, yes, I'm going to send you the renderings. And she was like, I need you to call over there and buy them tomorrow. And I was like, wait, what? I mean, I save up because of this. I ain't been on no celebratory vacation because I bought a house because of this, just so I could, pay for cabinets. All right. That's the episode. I hope you enjoyed me and Thembi talking about our current favorite thing. I'm so obsessed with this show. I absolutely cannot wait until season 2. Did you catch that part she said? She was like, I don't know how much they'll be jumping forward. And I was like, is that a clue? Are we going to get adult versions or college versions of Justin and Keisha? I saw a thread the other day. People were talking about potential season 2 options for Forever. And they were like, what if it was the parents' relationship and how they got together? They are forever. I mean, God willing. Wouldn't that be super interesting? I hope Mara hears us. All right. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening. Talk soon. Enough. Okay. Bye.